Department of Computer Engineering and Information Technology. Semester 3rd. Subject DMS and POD for IF3I. Myself Miss Anita Shirture. We are from Devi Mahalakshmi Polytechnic, Titwada. Chapter number 4 in DMS subject is PL Sql programming. This chapter is for 16 marks. In previous lecture or video, we have discussed about what is PL Sql and why use in PL Sql in programming language. So, in this video, we will learning outcome of this video to discuss about the cursor. Why use cursor in PL Sql? We discuss about the cursor attributes and what is trigger and why using trigger in a PL Sql, as well as we have discussed about the triggers example. Cursor. In this chapter, we will discuss the cursor in PL Sql. Oracle creates a memory area known as the context area for processing an SQL statement, which context area for processing SQL statement which contains all the information needed for processing the statement. For example, the number of rows processed. A cursor is a private set of records. A cursor is a pointer to this context area. PL Sql controls the context area through a cursor. A cursor holds the rows written by a SQL statement. The set of rows the cursor holds is referred to as the active set. You can name a cursor so that it could be referred to in a program to fetch and process the rows returned by the SQL statement, one at a time. An Oracle cursor is equal to VB record set is equal to JDBC result set. Then cursor attributes. Cursor name, module, row count, module found, module not found, and module is open. Then the row count returns the number of rows affected by an insert, update, or delete statement, or written by a select into statement. Return a true. %found, one or more rows retrieved. Return true if an insert, update, or delete statement affected one or more rows, or select into statement returned one or more rows. Otherwise, it returns false. Then cursor name, module not found, no rows found. The logical opposite of a %found, it returns true if an insert, update, or delete statement affected no rows, or a select into statement return no rows, otherwise it returns false. Then is open. Is the cursor open? There are two types of cursor, the implicit cursor and explicit cursor. Explicit cursor again divided into two parts, the static cursor and reference cursor. So in the next slide we will discuss about in detail of a implicit cursor as well as explicit. Implicit cursors are automatically created by Oracle whenever an SQL statement is executed when there is no explicit cursor for the statement. Programmers cannot control the implicit cursor and the informations in it. Whenever an HTML statement insert, update and delete is issued, an implicit cursor is associated with this statement. For insert operations, the cursor holds the data that needs to be inserted. For update and delete operations, the cursor identifies the rows that would be affected. In PL SQL, you can refer to the most recent implicit cursor as the SQL cursor, which always has attributes such as %found, %is open, %not found and %row count. The SQL cursor has additional attributes %bulk row count and bulk exceptions designed for use with a for all statement. Next is explicit cursor. In an explicit cursor a programmer defined cursor for gaining more control over the context area. An explicit cursor should be defined in the declaration section of the PL SQL block. It is created on a select statement which returns more than one row. The syntax for creating an explicit cursor is here. So the cursor is the keyword is used for whenever you can write the syntax of a explicit cursor, then cursor name is select statement, then semicolon. Then first is workings with the explicit cursor includes the following steps are there. The first is the declare the cursor. Declaring the cursor for initializing for memory. Declaring the cursor, define the cursor with a name and the associated select statement. Next is opening the cursor. Opening the cursor allocates the memory for the cursor and makes it ready for fetching the rows returned by the SQL statement into it. Then fetching a row, fetching the cursor. Fetching the cursor involves accessing one row at a time. For example, we will fetch rows from the above open cursor as follows. Then next is closing the cursor. Test for the end of cursor and fetching a row. Here the sample cursor programs are here. The declare cursor students cursor A. The select star from the student. This is the table of the student. V students cursor and row type. Then instead of we could do a V students and row types, the begin is start from the programs, and after that the dbms output.put line open the student's cursor, then fetch while loop are. Next is the declare cursor student cursor is the select last measure from the student. Then be last student. This is the program for using the cursor program. And then begin is the start from the program. DBMS output.put lines, and the printed lines are there, and the open the student's cursor. Fetch fetch attributes are used for when is Pl Sql handy? When something is too complicated for SQL, when conditional branching and looping are needed. Example: write a Pl Sql programs that assigns email address to each employee or student in a table. Following these rules are applied. The email address should be all lowercase. Email address should default to first initial plus the first 7 letters of the last name. If email is already used, then use first initial plus middle initial plus first 6 letters of the last name. Then, if the previous address is taken, next is the stored procedures. The Pl Sql code stored in database and executed when called by the user. Called by a procedure name from another Pl Sql block or using execute from SQL plus. For example, execute the exec SQR of 50. Some of the example of this procedure: the create procedure SQR in bracket v nums to SQR in number bracket complete as v underscore answer number in bracket given the data type 10, then begin v underscore answer. Next is the functions. We will discuss the functions in a Pl Sql. A function is the same as a procedure except that it returns a value. Therefore, all the discussions of the previous chapters are true for the functions too also. And the Pl Sqls, the user defined function stored in the database and executed when a function's call is made in code. Creating a functions are used. The standalone functions is created using the create function statement. The simplified syntax for the create statement is followed. The create or replace functions, the square rate, the p number to square in number, the return number, then is we answer number in bracket 10. The begin we answer is colon is equal to p number to square into p number to square, return of we answer, the end of the statement. The function's name specifies the name of the functions, or the options allows the modifications of an existing functions. The function must contain a return statement and the stored procedure examples are here. Now we will discuss the triggers in a Pl Sql. Triggers are stored programs which are automatically executed or fired when some events occur. The Pl Sql code executed automatically in response to database event, typically DML. Like the other stored procedures, triggers are stored in the database. Triggers are in effect returned to be executed in response to any of the following events. A database manipulation DML statement, the create, alter or drop. A database definition in the DDL, the statement create, alter or a drop. Then a database operations, the server error, log on, log off, startup or shutdown. Triggers can be defined on the table, view, schema or a database with which the event is associated. Some of the benefits of a triggers are the generating the some derived column values automatically, enforcing referential integrity, event logging and storing informations on the table access, auditing, and synchronize the replications of tables, imposing security authorizations, preventing invalid transactions. Often used to enforce the complex constraint, especially multi-table constraint. Financial posting is an example of this. Creating a triggers. The syntax for creating a triggers is create or replace trigger name as there. Then before, after, delete, inside, update. Any query you can use there. Then of column names also, column name. Then on table name. For each row, when the triggering conditions are applied there, and after that declare the statement, begin trigger statement, and then end to delete a trigger use. Here, the create or replace trigger means the creates or replace an existing trigger with the trigger name. Before, after, the instead of, this specifies when the trigger will be executed. The instead of a clause is used for creating trigger on a view. Insert or update or delete, this specifies the DML operations. And the column names, this specifies the column name that will be updated. And a table name, this specifies the name of the table associated with the trigger. And for each row, this specifies a row level trigger, that is the trigger will be executed for each row being affected. Otherwise, the trigger will execute just once. Some of the MCQs, multiple choice questions, are here. Question number 1. Which of the following statement is true about implicit cursor? Option A. Implicit cursor are used for SQL statements that are not named. Option B. Developers should use implicit cursor with great car E. Option C. Implicit cursors are used in cursor for loops to handle data processing. Option D. Implicit cursors are no longer a features in a Oracle E. Answer is option A. The implicit cursors are used for SQL statements that are not named. Question number 2. Which three of the following are implicit cursor attributes? %found. Option B, %too many rows. Option C. Third question. For which trigger timing can you reference the new and old qualifiers? Option A, statement and row. Option B, statement only. Option C, row only. Option D, Oracle forms trigger.